Welcome back to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric quilting edition. In this video, I'm going to finally embark on the project I've been talking about the last couple weeks, bringing to the public simple, basic patchwork quilting skills. For the person who has never really sewn much, maybe never sewn at all, for the person who's asking, where do I start? That's what these videos are for. These are for simple techniques, skill building that allows you to then go out and tackle all the beautiful patterns and techniques that the quilting world has to offer. Each of these blocks and quilts that I bring to you can technically be done with templates, with scissors, pencil, snip and tear for strips, but I'm going to go ahead and use rotary cutter and mat, keeping it simple, showing you the techniques. In my tips and tricks video, I've already gone over a little bit about how to prepare the fabric, how to make the cuts. My fabric has been washed, it's been pressed, it's been prepared, and I'm ready to cut. For the block that I'm doing today, which is similar to this, it's a 9-patch, simple 9-patch that's going to have borders put around it for a pillow top. And for the baby quilt, it's going to have sashing, strips between 4 9-patch blocks that are going to be separated with sashing pieces, and then borders put around it. I will be having tutorial pieces in between, coming back and speaking directly to you. This is brand new type of technique for me to share. I should say the technical side of videoing. This is a little new, so I hope you bear with me. We'll get through this, and each video hopefully will get better. But also in each video, I will be focusing more on the specific skill building and not going over so much of the basics that we start with right now. So, getting ready to cut out this 9-patch block that I need, this baby quilt that I want to make. I need, for the 9-patch block, I simply need 4.5 inch square pieces of my yellow, 4.5 inch square pieces out of my green, and 1 out of my blue. We're going to show you, cutting on the yellow, how we get those pieces. I'm using a 6.5 inch wide ruler. If you hear noise behind me, it is my cat. She has awoken and is pestering me, as cats will do. So I place the ruler down, double check. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I have a 1/2 inch strip here. I line up one of the ruler lines along the fold, and I make the cut. I can walk my hand along it if I need to go slower. Very important tip in cutting that I think I forgot to mention in my video on prepping the fabric. This is one of the areas that people really end up getting confused about. Every time you make a cut along that fold, fabric hasn't moved. But when I unfold the fabric has moved. I will true up the edge of my fabric every so many cuts that I make. In this case, if I wanted to cut more strips, I would take this back to the iron. I'd press out the fold wrinkles. I would come back, and my next cut that I would do the cut, instead of 4.5, I would line up here. I would make sure that I have 1, 2, 3, 4.5, but I might have a little extra over here because it may be wonky. I'd make the cut. I'll go ahead and demonstrate, even though I don't have a wonky edge. I would make the cut. I now know this edge is true. Oops, until I move it. Forgot to get the edge. I would flip this piece over. I would line it up again. And I'd true up this edge. One of the big problems people run in... I have a cat, goodness. One of the big problems that people run into when they're making lots of strip cuts is that everything gets a little bit off with each time we unroll the fabric, with each time we move the fabric. So if you're making strip cuts, every so many strips, make sure you true up that edge again. That's just a really good tip. Now, in order to cut these down to the squares that I need, I will layer up to 6 pieces of fabric. I won't go any bigger. I have a rotary cutter that could go through more. I find 6 is the maximum I like to do for accuracy and for ease. Now, here on the end, there is what's called the selvage. It's a different type. It's the edge of where the weaving is being done. The weaving is on a loom going lengthwise like this, and the edge is where the threads are going back and forth. It's sometimes a different color, it sometimes has print on it, it's sometimes thicker, but you want to remove the selvage. When I first started quilting, no one told me that. It can cause issue in your quilt. Not often, huge issue if it's a scrap quilt, not such a big deal, but it's a good habit to get into. Saves frustration later on, down the line. So I have my 4.5 inch ruler. I set that on and I make the cut. And so for the pillow top, I need 4 yellows like this. For the quilt itself, I will need 16, and I will just cut along the strips. Now I actually really only need 2 of these strips would have given me the 16. I happen to know I have future quilts that will use the extras, so I'm not worried about the extras. So that is how you cut. Now, if you're doing this the template way, you would be drawing the shapes and cutting the shapes. But when it comes to the sashing, when it comes to the borders, you would want to do the snip and tear that I demonstrated in my other video. I would measure the size that I would need for the sashing, the width. I'd put a snip at that measurement, I'd tear it, and then I would measure it using a measuring tape, whatever, to get my lengths. Okay? So if you're doing templates, that's a fast and easy way to get sashing and borders. Okay, so I'm not going to show any more cutting because that has been covered in another video. It shows it here. Okay, so I have finished cutting my pieces. I'm ready to go over the sewing machine. A tip that I want to share, I sometimes will use my large rotary ruler, and I will place out my my block and take it over to the machine like this. If you're doing a bunch of them, this is a fabulous way to set them out and be able to move them around. It is really important that you lay out your blocks so that you can see how they come together. As you get better and as you're following instructions, you're going to say, oh, I need this unit, this many of this unit, this many of this unit, and you're going to sew all of those, and then you're going to bring the components. But when it comes time to sew the blocks together, it's really good to lay out your blocks. If you can, right next to your sewing machine, you're going to see that in the video that I'll show sewing these together. But that's another little tip. Take the time to lay out your block. and then go to the machine. So I think that is enough of the intro. I will show you now the tip, the sewing it together. Feel free to pause as you want to see something. And I'll be back with you again in a few minutes. Okay, so I have a pillow cover and made a mini quilt, I guess you could say. Now all I need to do to make the baby quilt is make that center block 4 more times and sew it together following the instructions that I have in my PDF. So I'm going to go do that, and I will add in just a little bit of video showing how to add sashing in between the blocks. Something to keep in mind is adding sashing. The sashing is just simply blocks. They're just skinny blocks. So it's like doing the 9 patch again, only you're going to have 4 big blocks and 4 skinny small blocks, which we call sashing. The borders go on the same way. Always make sure to measure before you put a border on, because your blocks can't, your quilts can be a little bit off, and it's good to have them, you know, measure your sashing, measure your borders, make them fit. So there you have it, and we will go and make a few more blocks, and we'll see you back again in a few minutes. Have the border on, and I forgot how big 40-inch by 40-inch baby quilt is, but I do look forward to sandwiching this. It's a little too big for me to hold up and for you to see entirety of it, so I'm sure I'll put a picture here to show the finish. And I'm now covered in string, as is the case. So this has been a learning experience for me. I hope that there has been some useful information for you, the viewer. It's been another journey down the path of learning how to video techniques, tips, information. I do hope that this has been a fruitful unwinding with fiber and fabrics for you, and that you will join me again soon. Until then, best wishes and have a wonderful day.